Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, I look like shit. Nothing new. I never get used to it. It's always a surprise. Anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, so this was just kind of a thought, and I don't know. I don't have much of a filter. I never really have. Especially when it comes to the idea of free speech. I always felt like, well, if we're talking about free speech, then do I have permission to speak freely? Because if so, I have some shit to say. And so I had this one thought, and I just had a spontaneous urge to share it. And it has to do with the whole thing about survival. This like survivalist bullshit. I mean, there's relevance up to a point, and then it just becomes bullshit. So I wanted to address the bullshit aspect of it. So let's get right into it. So now this is quite the phenomenon on platform, social media platforms, where people will talk about stuff that they have no right to talk about, that they have no expertise on, and they'll act as though they're the expert on the subject. We see this all the time, and that they really shouldn't be talking about it. And survival is one. So, for example, I know, okay, like there's a person that I personally know has a serious problem with drinking alcohol and drugs, and among various other things, and is going on like making videos and seriously like acting like they're an expert on survival. And that they're one of the few people that's gonna survive, and and all this stuff, and it's just kind of like, so, and it got me, I was just like thinking about that and realizing this is just something that I want to say is if you are a person who is seriously considering that you need to survive, and because of the times that we're in, and it's we might end up in a civil war, or there's gonna be like some fucking economic crash or whatever that's gonna drive people into this having to know survival skills and having to survive. I'm gonna tell you something. Any person that's got a problem with drinking or drugs, they're going to be some of the first people to go. And like if I'm drinking alcoholically, and then I'm going and talking about how I know all this and that about survival, no, I don't know shit about surviving. Because the first thing that a person needs to do if they drink alcoholically is quit fucking drinking. The first thing that a person needs to do if they're using drugs, like habitually, is stop doing drugs, dude. Like, you think you're gonna be effective at surviving with your fucking quarter pound or half pound of weed in your bug out bag, and you're gonna be smoking weed and drinking and all this shit and surviving while you're drinking booze and smoking weed and who knows whatever the fuck else you blasting off on DMT and all this. That ain't gonna happen, bro. So if a person hasn't already accustomed to and adapted and responded accordingly to the abstinence of drugs and alcohol, I don't care how much they brag about how belly badass they are, that they're this great survivalist that knows all these great survival skills, they're not going to make it. Not unless they got a lot of money to buy that $100,000, bug out vehicle and all this other shit, they're not going to make it. But they'll talk all big and tough all over online how they're the best survivalist, and they're going to teach you all these survival skills. And like, don't listen to them. If you know that they have a drinking problem and or a drug problem, and they're online bragging about how they're this great survivalist and they have all this knowledge on surviving, they're full of shit. I have one of those survival books, the ones that are like the highly acclaimed, the #1 survival book. I've got it. Where is it? It's around here somewhere. Anyways, one of the things, well, this is part of survival, is if you're like used to sitting around and drinking booze, 12-pack of booze every day, and smoking weed and all this shit, you're not a survivalist. And when the shit does hit the fan, you're not going to be able to handle it, because you're going to be forced to stop drinking, and then you're going to start going into detoxing from weed. Now even marijuana is, when you quit marijuana, you detox. Back when I smoked weed back in the, decades ago and shit, weed wasn't like that. You don't really detox, maybe a little bit, but not enough to like really notice. But now weed's like, all these people that smoke weed, they're all fucking uptight and on edge and discontent and irritable and all this shit. It's because they're fucking addicted to weed. And when they don't have it, they turn into, some fucking lunatic in need of their medication, But anyways, yeah, so, but the thing is you're going to find these people all over the internet that are talking all Billy Badass like they're a survivalist, and they're going to act like they're going to be teaching you survival skills. It has nothing to do with teaching you anything. It's about them stroking their own fucking cock, and stroking their own ego and shit, their big boner of how awesome they are. It has nothing to do with relaying information to you. They could give a fucking care less about you. It's all about them. So it's such a it's so fake that they come out and act like that they're, out of the goodness of their heart, they're going to teach you survival skills and shit. And the majority of them aren't going to make it because they're fucking alcoholics and drug addicts, They just talk a bunch of shit. That's all they do, is talk this big talk like they're Mr. Billy Badass. You get them out in the field, though, and man, they won't last 24 hours before they start going into DTs and shaking because they don't have their booze.